Up here we have a transparency of Groom Lake. Groom Lake is where the infamous Area 51, S4, S2, a CIA base, it was originally a bombing range, a nuclear test site. It was later become the most secret base in the United States. It employs over 18,000 workers who work in shifts of 12 hours at a whack. Most of them work in the cover of darkness, like us. We built out 9 underground military bases there, each with an average capacity capable of basically a city underground, roughly 4¼ cubic miles hollowed out underground. They have boring machines, for instance. They don't bore, they literally vitrify and melt the rock, deflagrate the rock. It's a very sophisticated laser melting and deflagrating system. It reduces the rock to a powder and then melts the remaining rock as a coating on the inside of the base, so you don't have to use gunite cements and other kinds of things like that. That's all old hat now. Technology is just basically the new technology we get is the old hat of the military. I'm going to be real brief about it. I carried a level 1 security clearance, the Rhyolite 38 factor. There are very few of us. There's nobody except myself, to my knowledge, talking like this. Nobody. I'm breaking the law. I'm breaking world as well as federal law, coming out and even talking about this to a group of people. I love my country more than I love my life. 2 weeks ago, I was shot in the shoulder. I don't want to gore you women out, but I was shot in the shoulder up here. I recently have become friends of a retired FBI agent who took me under the wing. He says, I've never seen a person braver than you, and I said, well, there's more coming. Our patriot movement in these United States is going to pick up the ball, and we are going to kick the parasites out. First of all, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, a few other founding fathers, Patrick Henry to mention a few, all had visions that these United States is going to live 700 years from where they were standing, and that was somewhere around the late 1700s, early 1800s. So you can count this country. This country isn't going to go to a new world order. I believe firmly in constitutional law. I'm not very well skilled in it, and that's my embarrassment. But I'm going to be real blunt about it. The government that is now instilled in ruling over us are ruling as we're serfs and they're the kings and queens. Now, that's a feudal system. That isn't even a democracy. We are now being ruled by an autocracy and a technocracy. In other words, technical knowledge as rules as king, with a feudal type system. Feudal systems haven't been used in the last 350 years, and they're coming back like gangbusters. If we are... My father has laid the groundwork with theoreticians about Philadelphia experiment and other experiments. What does that have to do with me? Other than the fact of that, all I can say is that if it wasn't for... See, he never told us kids this, and he kind of kept it secret until a couple of weeks before he died. I kind of regretfully say that. I don't agree with what he did on the other side of the pond in Nazi Germany, but I'll tell you one thing. I think he had a lot of guts in coming here and doing what he did. He was hated in his own land. In fact, there was a $1 million in gold reward for anybody who could kill him. Just bring the picture back of the dead person, and it never happened. Anyway, back to topic number 1 is dumb bases or deep underground military bases. We've been basically lied to, folks. We've been lied to a long time. Number 1, the alien question Nobody really knows the truth. We've been ruined by Madison Avenue has painted a very unrealistic picture of what's going on with outer space aliens and the inside of government, especially at Groom Lake. This particular facility, the hat shows, this wasn't the original insignia. This is kind of like a local fish wrapper type insignia. And the original insignia had a skunk on it because it was part of the infamous skunk words. So anyway, this particular base originally is housed up to 117 live alien critters, or whatever you want to call them. Right now, it's not housing much of anything. Most of the stealth hardware has been removed. They moved it over to Kirtland Air Force Base. First of all, I want to tell you about aliens and the alien agenda. Back in 1954, under the Eisenhower administration, the federal government decided to circumvent the Constitution of the United States and form a treaty outside of the borders of the United States within critters, or whatever you want to call them, aliens. And one survived, and I believe 6 or 7 were, I don't know the whole story about the whole thing. And one of the artifacts I have here on the table is when I was a young child. I was about 14 at the time. I had a friend of my father was Sir Johnny Rawlins. He was head of British Naval Intelligence. And he gave me, I asked him if I could have a piece of metal of this crashed disc, and my father protested violently. But anyway, Johnny Rawlins said, "Sure, I can give you a little piece." And he gave me a little piece. I've had them in my collection ever since. That was kind of like the small start of a collection. But other than that, the UFOs really wasn't my bag until I started work at Area 51, which is in Nellis Air Force Base north of Las Vegas, Nevada. Going back in 1979 in a firefight, it took me about 2.5 years to recuperate, enough that I could go back to work. But I did. I survived, and I went back to work. Through Morrison Knudsen and EG&G and Bechtel and Page and Page and other construction outfits at the time. Anyway, at Area 51, they were testing all kinds of very peculiar spacecraft. I think you're also, how many people here, for instance, are familiar with Bob Lazar's story? Good. That's a good group indeed. I'd suggest more of you buy his, or obtain his tape, or borrow his tape, and read some of the publications. He was a physicist who worked at Los Alamos National Laboratory at Area 51, trying to decipher what was the propulsion factor of basically these alien spacecraft, these discs and other kinds of type of craft. So, but there's another thing I want to talk to you about other than all this stuff about deep underground military basing that might be effective. We're all basically here as kind of like a captive audience, except that we're all worried about the strange activity of our federal government. I'm very worried about it. They've stonewalled senators. They've lied to the public. They refuse to tell the truth in regards to the alien matters. I can go on and on. That the list is it would take longer than there are days here, let alone minutes. So I can tell you that, in all respects, I'm rather disgruntled that since I used to be a rather high-ranking worker in our federal government structure, I'm very disappointed in the activities of our federal government, very worried. For instance, to run by several topics to you. Recently, I happen to know somebody that lives in and around, I live just south of Portland, Oregon. I know somebody that works at Gunderson Steel Fabrication, and what they do is they make railroad cars. And a fellow I know, I've known for the better part of 30 years. He works there. He's kind of a lead welder and engineer. He's kind of a quiet type, and he came in excited to me. He called me up, and I met him, and I tried to calm him down quite a bit. But he told me, he says, well, they're building prisoner cars. They're gonna, looks like everything you've been talking about the federal government is starting to happen. And he was real nervous about it. And I said, slow down, Bob. So anyway, he told me what was happening. He mentioned that Gunderson has got a contract with the federal government to build 107,200 full-length rail cars, each with 143 pairs of shackles in each car. And there are 11 subcontractors in this giant project, and supposedly Gunderson got over $2 billion for the contract. Bethlehem Steel, there's different steel outfits or different fabrication outfits across the country are building them. Anyway, I says, hey, this is a nice, fantastic story, but how does it pertain? And he says, well, I got to show you one of these cars. So we did. We went to the rail yards in North Portland. I call it Graffitiville, USA, because it's wall-to-wall graffiti. And there's a new car, and he popped open the seal and slid the door back, and there they were. Boy, he wasn't wrong. And it's scary. Now, if you multiply 107,200 times 143 times 11, you'll come up with a monster figure of about 15 million. 15 million is about the number of...
Some of them are capable of riding on a cushion of air about 3/4 of an inch off a rail at a better part of Mach 2. And he's actually been on one of these trains. I've only been in one of the tunnels and helped build some of the tunnels. Incidentally, I helped work on 13 deep underground military bases. Had hands-on experience. Notorious was the one in and around the Dulce, the southeastern and southwestern sides of Dulce, New Mexico, in the Los Alamos laboratory regions, where we built some hermetically sealed rooms that were very deep, going down over a mile. We also built additions onto Groom Lake and S2 and S4 complexes. There are a total of 9 underground. They're called DUMBs. Like, you can learn a lot from this dummy, but DUMB stands for Deep Underground Military Base. And or a deep underground, DUM-2, for instance, is a submarine base, and I helped build a few of those too, which are off our continental shelves and then certain islands and out in the Atlantic and the Pacific in strategic locations. Military professors that used to be in war colleges and the like are training people like ex-Russian KGB and Spetsnaz people right here on American soil. I've seen it with my own 2 eyes, along with other people, other geologists. By the way, I'm still a geologist, still do geological survey work. However, I don't work for the government anymore. I took my security clearance and all my government stuff and cut it up and sent it back to the, pardon my French, SOBs. When I found out that a number of these 131 deep underground military bases are being used to subvert the Constitution of these United States and its people, I says, that is enough. I can't possibly be connected. Oh, well, Mr. Schneider, you can't quit, they said. Well, I says, yes, I can. I'm an individual, I'm going to quit, and I'm walking off the job. And he says, so I got arrested and casually told, well, you got to finish a job. And so I caved into that part, and I finished 3 weeks, and then at that time, my father was dying, and I was allowed home, and I never went back for my paychecks. Don't intend to either. These people are beginning to show signs of being our utmost enemy. I'm talking about military people now engaged in training foreign troops on American soil, clearly against the Bill of Rights and the U.S. Constitution. It's why we formed a government, why our forefathers formed a government, a republic of these United States in the first place, way back 200 plus years ago. Because the drawing and quartering of soldiers, taxation without representation, law by edict, otherwise known as today's version, executive order, among other things. The very reasons that we became, in quote, free, a free republic, a free society, possibly one of the greatest nations to ever be a nation on this earth, were instilled in our founding fathers that are now so far away from the people now running our federal government structure. So I'm here today to touch upon a number of subjects. One being that these underground bases, roughly over 3 of them per state. There's now, instead of 12 prison camps, there's 39. That's almost 1 per state. They're building 2 prison camps every 7 months. They're building 2 underground military bases every year. Each one of these military bases, by the way, these underground military bases, they cost somewhere between $17 and $26 billion. They employ 1,800 to 10,000 workers each in varying grades of skill. This particular scenario, the F-117A, the B-2 bomber, maybe the Aurora, although that's not an accurate rendition of what it looks like. The airframes are predominantly made of alien metals, metals beyond element 109, and metal composites, some of the skins of which are composed of rubber and carbon fiber, and the airframes are composed of complex carbon fibers mixed with elements such as marinite, which is element 123, which is extremely stable. I just kind of slapped this together. It's not quite as professionally done as these, but this was in Saudi Arabia. At that time they had 58 of these. This was half the fleet. And I'll give you a few statistics that these aircraft do. First of all, it's got a radar absorbing material. That's the coal black coating. It's a type of a, in a while I'll get out some alien artifacts for you, some metals and some of the doping or painting that drips off of this when the aircraft is heated up to a white hot condition. And anyway, these are specially hangared. They have to be kept cool. They have to be kept at a temperature of 60 degrees roughly when they're not moving. There's faceting on the edges. The faceting is a scalenohedral crystalline form. It's a crystalline form that predominantly does not occur on planet Earth, and is an alien. It's once again alien technology that has been adapted to Earth type or terrestrial type technology. These ideas were first thought of in Soviet Russia, and later they were adapted. They couldn't use that particular kind of thing in the early 70s, so one of their scientists defected, came over here and started to work immediately with Lockheed. His name was Subakov, I believe was his name. Anatoly Subakov, Alexei Subakov. This fellow was also a pioneer and such. His name was Paul Benowitz. He was going to go public with the UFO and the alien agenda thing. He was a CIA pilot. He was also with the U.S. Air Force. Of course, they couldn't let that happen, so they stuffed him in the trunk of a car one night, took him off to a mental institution, and made him into a mental vegetable. He can't even write his own name today. If it wasn't for a brother who spent $1 million and a sister looking for him, he'd probably still been rotting.
They literally vitrify and melt the rock, deflagrate the rock. It's a very sophisticated laser melting and deflagrating system. It reduces the rock to a powder and then melts the remaining rock as a coating on the inside of the base, so you don't have to use gunite cements and other kinds of things like that. That's all old hat now. Technology is just basically the new technology we get is the old hat of the military. I'm going to be real brief about it. I carried a level 1 security clearance, 15,000 workers who work in shifts of 12 hours at a whack. Most of them work in the cover of darkness, like us. We built 9 underground military bases there, each with an average capacity capable of basically a city underground, roughly 4¼ cubic miles hollowed out underground. They have boring machines, for instance. They don't bore women out, but I was shot in the shoulder up here. I recently have become friends of a retired FBI agent who took me under the wing. He says, I've never seen a person braver than you, and I said, well, there's more coming. Our patriot movement in these United States is going to pick up the ball, and we are going to kick the parasites out. First of all, George Washington, and up here we have a transparency of Groom Lake. Groom Lake is where the infamous Area 51, S4, S2, a CIA base, it was originally a bombing range, a nuclear test site. It was later become the most secret base in the United States. It employs over the Rhyolite 38 factor. There are very few of us, there's nobody except myself, to my knowledge, talking like this. Nobody. I'm breaking the law. I'm breaking world as well as federal law, coming out and even talking about this to a group of people. I love my country more than I love my life. 2 weeks ago, I was shot in the shoulder. I don't want to gore you